What we're going to do is learn how to find the correlation coefficient using Microsoft Excel. So what you can do is click and drag over your data on the Insert menu, click on, you can use recommended charts or select scatter plot. Scatter plots are how we illustrate two variable data. So what we're going to do is click on the data, so one of the points, and then we'll right click and say add trend line. And what we will do is go to the bottom and say display R squared value on the chart. The R squared value is something called the coefficient of determination, and it is, for linear relations, the equivalent of the correlation coefficient squared. So in order to solve for R, we can use the square root of this. So square root of 0.218 is equal to approximately 0.4669. And that is the correlation coefficient just by solving. Now, this right here is missing an x-axis label, so we're just going to click on our graph. I'll close this formatting menu. But when we get back to our graph, what we can do is click under Chart Design, Add Chart Element, Axis Title, Primary Vertical, this is X, and this is Axis Title, Primary Vertical is double-click, Y. A title for a graph should always be Y versus X, and if you have actual values for those variables, make sure that you give it the appropriate name. Now that being said, we'll zoom out to do the following. We will always be able to check our answers by quickly getting the value with Microsoft Excel. But in order to calculate this manually, we need to figure out how are we going to use this formula. And this formula was entered using a text box. So I did insert text and a text box. I clicked and dragged over an area. And then what I did was, with the cursor in the box, insert an equation, and I used the equation menu. So that being said, this is our equation. And what we need to do is look at each of these items. Do we have the variables that need to be inputted into the formula to get our value? N is 6 because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ordered pairs are given in our equation. But we need the sum of x, y. So I will start a column for x times y. And that looks like equals to start a function in Microsoft Excel. And relative to this cell, it's 2 to the left. Multiplication looks like the asterisk symbol in computer language. So that is Shift 8 times the position B2. That's 1 unit to the left. When I hit enter, it does this calculation for this particular cell. But when I click on the cell, go to the bottom right corner and drag the black cursor down, this activates the autofill feature. So it makes a relative function call, or a relative cell reference. That's 2 to the left and 1 to the left from the cell they're being multiplied. That's what we wanted. Next, I see the sum of x and the sum of y. So this is the sum of x, which is equal to the sum. We'll use that function. Start a bracket to make our selection. It wants an input of numbers. Click and drag over that area and bracket. We get our sum. And I'm going to create just a little bit of a distinction between the data that I'm calculating and the sums down below, just by clicking and dragging over top and giving it a different color. Next, I'll also need the sum equals sum of these cells. And what I can do is, as opposed to entering that each time, double clicking on this right here, this is a relative cell reference. The cells 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 above are being added. And that's what I want to do for each of the cells that I'm going to be doing in the future. So I can click and drag that across using the autofill feature, and it will do that automatically for the remaining columns. Now, I don't have these columns complete. What else is that I need? The sum of x squared. Notice that these look very similar, but this is actually saying to take each and every single x and square it. So that's just a title right here. And what I can do is equals x, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left, and I'll raise it to the power using the caret symbol, which is shift 6, raise it to the power 2. Click and drag that down for each of the cells to do this quickly. And then I will also need a y squared, y to the power 2. And to get that for the first value equals this cell to the power 2. Copy that for each. Now, what you have are the components of this formula to calculate by hand, and you're able to use this to verify your answers when calculating the correlation coefficient manually.